Dogman ruined our first date. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I've got a short but sweet Dogman story that happened to me and my first serious girlfriend way back in the mid-1990s. She and I had been dating for a few weeks, and we were taking it slowly, but it felt like it was finally time for our first, snuggle and kiss. I took her to dinner, then we wandered in the setting sun over to the gazebo by the lake, which was the most romantic place in our town. Well, the moment finally arrived and I went in for the kiss. She accepted, and I closed my eyes pretty much in ecstasy that she was feeling the same way that I was. She was facing out toward the water, and I was facing in toward the land. When we broke contact, I was stunned as she pushed me away and ran from the gazebo, leaving me alone. I wanted to run after her, but I also didn't want to make things worse than they were. I assumed she had changed her mind about me in that instant, and believe me, I felt hurt. Immediately I started calculating in my head whether I should call her that night or wait till the next day. Should I have a mutual friend feel her out to see where I stood? She mattered to me, so I was lost in thought, wondering if I could fix whatever I had just broken. Then I smelled this awful odor of wet dog, and I heard water splashing behind me. Wondering what this was all about, I turned around and immediately found myself looking into these golden, glowing, inhuman eyes. Suddenly I was being growled at, and the eyes looked angry. When I could break that hypnotic gaze, I saw that the eyes were in a head that looked something like a feral dog or a wolf. That wolf-like head, however, was on top of a very hairy version of a human body. Wading on its hind legs through the lake, I was seeing something like a movie werewolf moving closer to me. And the closer it got, the more it rose up out of the lake, water pouring off its wet, hairy, man-like body. I was raised to believe that there are no such things as monsters in this world, and it pains me to go against my mother and my father. But experience has taught me that monsters most definitely are real, and they even come into human settlements on occasion. That night was one of those occasions. I don't know if it was hungry, or if it was curious, or if it was just lost, but on that night, both of us had seen that hairy beast man. The girl hadn't run from me. She had run from the smelly, wet man with the canine head, sneaking up behind me and in front of her. Even though I realized that, obviously it didn't make me feel any better. I wondered how fast that animal could pursue me if I made a break for it like my girlfriend had done. He let her go, but would he chase me? The creature stared at me silently from the water, and I'm not sure if it was just interested in what humans look like up close, or if it was trying to hypnotize me, like some people claim some animals can do. In either case, it did not object to me looking it in the eyes as most predators would. We watched each other as it silently rose up out of the water. I was able to see the wet dogman from the tops of its tall pointed ears down to about its midsection, and I'll try to remember its appearance for you. First of all, this was an animal, not a ghost or a space alien or a man in a costume or a hallucination. I think it was an intelligent animal, but not intelligent in a human way. Its fur dripped the way a wet dog's fur drips. It was real, and it was physically there. It wasn't supernatural or paranormal or a projection. The water rippled around it. The beast created waves when it moved. It was a real, physical being interacting with its environment, and I have little doubt that if it attacked me, it would cause me severe harm. First of all, judging by its huge pectoral muscles and tree trunk arms, this guy could beat me by using his sheer strength alone. As it was gritting its teeth at me, I could see a massive set of choppers in its mouth, just waiting to take a big bite out of life. My life, that is. At the end of its weightlifter arms were hands, or proto-hands. Almost hands, I guess you could call them, with a longer palm than a human, and somewhat shorter fingers proportionally. But with his terrifying-looking claws extended at the end of each almost finger, the length was nearly made up. It looked like this guy could tear my life up as easily as he could beat it down, and I was only seeing the top half of the creature. To say I was scared would not cover it, as I was frozen physically to the spot I was standing on. My mind was not frozen, however, as I calculated the chances of different possible routes of escape. So far, none of them had added up to being worth a try, and I found myself continuing to stare at that Dogman, hoping against hope that it wouldn't come any closer to me. "Dude, are you alright?" I jumped in the air and screamed like a little girl, so surprised was I that this voice had come up behind me. Turning around with my fist coiled, ready to punch someone in the head, I saw it was a good close buddy of mine who had come up behind me without me hearing him. I heard a splash in the water and turned back in time to see the Dogman submerging and swimming away from the gazebo underwater. My friend told me how he had seen my girlfriend running and crying, and he saw me alone in the gazebo, so he came over to see if I was all right. He didn't want me ending it all and jumping in the water or something to that effect. Then he said, "Phew, smells like dog over here, let's go." I walked back to town with him and I told him the story I just told you. I was still very much surprised by what happened, and I hadn't calmed down enough to consider how insane the story sounded. "Oh, she didn't run from me. She ran away from the werewolf in the water." No wonder my buddy was looking at me with such concern. I told him I wanted to call the girl from a payphone. This was like a year or two before everyone had cell phones, but my buddy talked me out of it. I guess he thought I was losing my mind from stress, but I was just being honest with him. The girl and I made up, but the spark was gone from our relationship. We did remain friends, however, as we both now share an interest in Dogman and Bigfoot. I'm still friends with her on social media, and we still share stories we find about cryptid encounters. I hope she's watching this episode, although if she is, I hope she doesn't out me. You see, unlike her, I still live and work in this small town. This is not an area with a reputation for cryptid sightings, and it would be dangerous for me to be too open about what I saw or how I feel about cryptids in America. I do hope that I can afford to retire someday, and if I can, then I promise to come clean and go public. But as long as paying my bills relies on the goodwill of my neighbors, I'm afraid I will have to remain silent about the time that Dogman ruined our first date. Dogman by the Castle. Back in the early 1970s, I had an aunt who dated an eccentric doctor. Visiting the castle on the beach that the strange surgeon lived in almost cost me my life when I met the Dogman by the Castle. The 1970s, especially the early part, were unlike any period of time before or since. The counterculture of the 60s became mainstream suburban culture in many ways by then. Shag rugs in sunken living rooms, straight normal guys growing their hair longer. Two of the Yankees traded wives. And into this milieu my aunt, let's call her Aunt Mallory, who had been very straight and proper, started dating this wild, swinging, and very rich surgeon. We didn't expect it to last long, but she and he actually became formal girlfriend and boyfriend, and our family got invited out to the castle to meet the guy. He reminded me of Vincent Price. He was African American, yet still reminded me of Vincent Price. Maybe it was the smoking jacket and the cigarette holder for his French smokes. He also had a lion he kept as a pet on a chain. Who would do that? This guy, that's who. I felt really bad for the cat, but I felt more scared of it than bad for it. He looked pretty cranky, as you can imagine. And so my sister and I got out of there as soon as we could and said we were gonna wander on the beach. The doctor told us to stay out of the forest. There were wild beasties out there. We rolled our eyes and of course made a beeline for the forest next to the beach. It was our obligation as kids to do so. We didn't realize until we were right up on them, but there were sandy cliffs about twice our height that we would need to climb in order to get up onto the level the forest was on. We headed to the shortest point available and started climbing. It was slow going, and we both fell back a few times as the hill was all sand and broke away at the touch. My sister noticed a rope someone had left hanging from the upper level, and we used that to climb up instead. We both attempted to make mental notes of where that rope was, then we headed off into the trees aimlessly, looking for the proverbial adventure and whatever comes our way. Well, we got that, and more. After racing around for a while and enjoying ourselves and the freedom from boring adults, we came upon something really strange. It was a footprint, but not like a normal footprint. For one thing, this guy had no shoes on. For the second, he seemed to have clawed toes. As my mind spun in circles trying to comprehend what we were seeing, my sister decided it had to be a bear, or maybe a very large wolf. Suddenly I could see what she was saying. That made more sense than a barefoot man with claws, after all. We followed the trail through the soft muddy dirt for some time, fascinated. The animal seemed to mainly walk on the balls of its feet, but occasionally would rest its haunches and leave prints that looked a lot like a giant human print. The thing about that is, it would seem to indicate that he was squatting on his back legs but standing up. Maybe he was walking bipedally too. That would mean it would have to be a bear, unless it was a reincarnated prehistoric giant sloth like we had seen at the museum. This was turning into the best day ever. We followed the tracks until we reached a cave with an entrance large enough that we could walk through standing. The footprints became jumbled at the cave entrance. Clearly, this location was entered and exited a lot lately, and by more than one creature most likely. We found the home of the thing, whatever it was. Now, why this next part made sense to us, neither my sister nor I will ever know, but we decided it would be a brilliant idea to go into the cave. Then we'd find a good place to hide and observe and discover what this creature was. That's right, we decided to go in the cave where we knew strange creatures lived and try to spy on them. Maybe we thought we could get on In Search Of with Mr. Spock or something. We had no sense at all that we might be entering into a dangerous situation in any way. We'd seen enough Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom episodes to be able to handle ourselves in the wild. So we walked into the cave as quiet as two dumb kids can, and the ground was hard in there. We didn't see footprints anymore. It gets dark pretty quick inside a cave, and the smell is terrible, as though a whole lot of things must have passed away in there. There's a passage we had to scrunch down and go slow to get through. If it sounds like we were walking directly into a death trap, there's a good reason for that. The tunnel opened up into a larger alleyway, with tall stones shooting up from the ground everywhere. We heard echoing noises, and following them led us to the edge of a chasm, a large stadium-like amphitheater under the ground. And down there, here and there, darting about in the darkness, we could make out very large, very fast men. This was the first moment I felt fear. The scene reminded me of Planet of the Apes in some way, or maybe the first sequel. We were in a place that wasn't even supposed to be, with creatures that weren't even supposed to exist. "What are they?" my sister whispered. "They're scary," I whispered back. We mutually decided to get out of there while we could, which, as it turned out, was a time that had already passed. When we got near the passage we had to scrunch to get through, there were creatures coming out of it. We quickly hid behind the stalagmites growing up all around. One after another, these man-sized things crawled into the cave and left into the larger chamber. We wanted to get a good look at them, and now our wish was being granted. The trouble was, they were also blocking our escape and probably going to eat us for dinner. The things crawling through those holes were, in fact, dogs. They moved gracefully on all fours, then simply got up onto their hind legs after exiting the tunnel and departed to the left in one graceful movement. They were equally comfortable on 2 legs or 4. I wasn't really sure what was going on. Maybe they were returning from a hunt. If so, they didn't seem to be bringing any food back with them. Even so, they smelt like death, and I felt sick. It was a few minutes after they were gone before I got up the nerve to go look in the tunnel and see if the coast was clear. As I got within 10 feet of the hole, I could hear something coming out, and just barely got behind a stalagmite in time. I was now standing behind a stone literally 2 or 3 feet from the thing that emerged from the tunnel. I could hear that there was another coming through now, and another, and another. I was crying, but trying very hard not to make any noise, or even to breathe too loud. 2 of the creatures got into some kind of altercation behind me, and one slammed the other into the rock I was hiding behind. I just held on as pebbles and dust fell from the cave roof on me. I was worried there might be a cave-in when a brand new problem rose its ugly head. All the dust raining down on me made me feel like I had to sneeze. Have you ever suppressed a sneeze? It's not that easy to do, is it? Have you ever tried to suppress a sneeze with 2 man-sized werewolf monsters having a fistfight directly behind you? That's even harder. But I did it anyway. I suppressed the sneeze. The creatures eventually took their troubles to the larger cavern, and I finally had a few seconds to go into a mild state of shock for a while. It seemed long overdue when the moment arrived, I assure you. I don't know how much time passed, but suddenly my sister was there, to my left, dragging me by the arm and saying the coast was clear. I couldn't really follow what she was talking about. I was not fully back to reality yet. As I was midway through the tunnel, crawling on my hands and knees, I woke up and realized where I was. That was bad timing. I was now frozen, unable to move, and weeping all over again. Remember, I was just a kid at the time. My sister was already out of the tunnel, and she looked back to see me crying. She urged me to get out. She told me we had to go. Nothing worked, though. I told her I couldn't move. Then, from behind, I heard a roar. The next thing I remember, we were back at the rope at the edge of the forest, leaping off the edge and jumping the 7 or 8 feet back down to the beach before running back to the relative safety of the crazy mad doctor's home in the castle with his pet lion. Like a lot of people in that era, we had an adventure, and we kept the details to ourselves. We never told our parents, we never told our friends, and after a while, it seemed harder and harder to believe it could even have happened. If there really were that many monster creatures with dog heads running around, surely they would get reported on in the newspaper. Surely there would be one in the zoo, or a stuffed one in a museum. How could a whole bunch of carnivorous man-sized predators live so close to civilization and not be something everyone was aware of? It's literally just not possible. And yet, this is the true story of the time I nearly got killed in Dogman Cave. Today we thank our executive producer Mary Gillies for making this episode possible. In her honor, we'd like to read this passage from a famous old book, something far wiser and more beautiful than anything I could ever write. And why do you worry about clothes? Consider how the lilies of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his glory was adorned like one of these. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Today has enough trouble of its own. I can't make a pitch for our channel memberships after reading such words of wisdom. It would just be wrong. However, Henry Lee Dogman has no problem doing it, so take it away, Hank. Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.